I think I've just had such richness that's been added to my life because of all of the things that have happened. As I say, like my career didn't go how I wanted to go, and that was disappointing. And then having to kind of bounce back from that and go on to the next thing and try a different, career out, and then being asked to teach, and then, trying to do coaching and realizing, oh, you can't just sit back and clients will just come to you. You actually have to go out and and find a way to get them.
So first of all, thank you very much for just making the time.
No, of course, of course.
Uh, the, the second part is I really want to know a little bit more about you
Yeah,
because I read your LinkedIn profile. Maybe
yeah.
you saw the notifications and going forth and back and to your profile, kind of trying to find more information about you. Uh, I know you graduated from Pennsylvania, but
Uh-huh.
that was an arts degree, right?
So I did political science and Japanese studies. Yeah, yeah.
So, uh, from the dates that I saw, you studied in the US, came
Uh-huh.
to Japan for a
Uh-huh.
while,
Uh-huh.
then went back to the States again for law school. I don't know. You went to Tokyo, you went to Kyoto, and
Yeah.
then you went back to the States, then you came
Yeah.
back to Tokyo,
Yeah.
then you went to Stanford. So what happened there? Like if you could, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, I'll give you just a quick 2 minutes. So I'm from Michigan originally. I lived there until I was 17.
Mhm.
And then I got a chance to finish high school in Singapore. So I went to Singapore, finished
Mm.
high school there,
Yeah.
then went to University of Pennsylvania, studied political science and Japanese. I studied abroad in Kyoto at a center. So that's probably what you're seeing. At the time, it was called the Stanford Center, the Stanford Kyoto Center for Japanese Studies.
I see.
Um, so now Columbia runs it, but it's the same program. So it's
Mhm.
a group of universities, mostly East Coast schools, and they all kind of put together this program in Kyoto for students from, all over who are interested in Japan. So I did that my junior year, then went back, finished, then started working for UBS. I was
Mhm.
supposed to work in New York, but they sent me to Tokyo. So then I worked in Tokyo for 3 years. Then
Mhm.
after that, I moved to the UK and I kept working at UBS for 2 more years. And then I went to law school at Harvard. Then I worked in New York for 2 years at a big law firm there, then
Mhm.
transferred back to Tokyo with that law firm.
I see.
And then I've been in Japan since that time.
Wow. So this is like I want to know the decision making, in every step, because it's I don't know. Do you see that as a straightforward career path, or like because I don't I don't think so, kind of thing, right? And in this podcast, I really because they always say the grass is always greener in the other side.
Yeah.
And whenever you see someone's career or like their job title or whatever, like or at least like many people that I talk to do, they don't know what's happened till you reach this stage in your life, and even the job that everyone thinks is perfect is not that perfect because there's always problems and everywhere, and that's what I'm trying to discuss kind of in this podcast.
Mhm, mhm.
So for you Brandon, like how did you how did the decision making process took you from Pennsylvania to now your time in Tokyo right now?
Um,
What happened there?
what happened? Many things happened.
Yeah.
Number one, I didn't plan on moving back to Japan right after college. I wanted to, was interested in it, but I didn't really see any viable career path for me to get back to Japan.
Mm,
And then UBS just said, "Do you want to go?" So that's how I got to Japan in the first place.
mm,
Then I was kind of deciding whether or not to go to graduate school.
Mm.
when I got to Japan. But then, so I got to Japan in 2007. And then, as you may recall, 2008, some things happened in the world. Uh,
Yeah.
so, then even my time working at UBS was not what I thought it was going to be. Yeah,
Mm.
at that time, UBS was, many people thought it was going to overtake Goldman Sachs and be the number one investment bank in the world. That was what people thought.
Mm.
So I felt like I was in a great place to ride that growth, and then that didn't happen. And
Mm.
Japan in particular was not growing at all. So it got to a point where I thought, okay, maybe I need to go closer to Switzerland, get closer to the headquarters. And so
Mm.
that's one of the big reasons why I moved to London. I'd never lived in London before. I knew a few people there, but not really anyone, and just went there
Mm.
and kind of figured it out when I got there. Then after a couple of years being at UBS in London, I discovered again that, UBS was still not really improving. And more importantly for me, I wasn't in the department I wanted to be in. So then I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? I did a small internship in law when I was an undergrad student. So I had a little bit of familiarity with what it was. And so I thought, okay, well, why don't I apply to law school again? But I applied to law school, I applied to business school, I thought about going into consulting, I thought about going into wealth management. And, Harvard Law School came out, and I thought, okay, well, let's do that. Yeah, I actually had a kind of difficult decision to make because I applied once and I got rejected from Harvard and I got rejected from Penn. And then I applied to University of Michigan. And I got into University of Michigan to do a JD MBA, and they were going to give me basically a full scholarship to do that.
Mm.
Uh, but it didn't feel right, like what I wanted to do. So then I said thank you, but no thank you. And then next cycle applied again, got rejected from Penn again. And then from Harvard, I got put on the wait list, which, if you know anything about the wait list at Harvard Law School, like basically once you never come off of that.
Yeah.
So I just went back, minding my own business. And then one day I got a phone call and they said, congratulations. And so then off I went.
So, so, so it's not like one of those stories that like you grew up wanting to be a lawyer, but you kind of just somehow you ended up not somehow like you obviously you applied, you did the work to get there, but it wasn't like a clear decision right from the beginning that you wanted to be a lawyer.
No, not at all.
And and what why like you said you applied for a few things like why law school? Like why law school was one of them?
Yeah, there were a number of reasons why. One of them, be quite honest, is I did not grow up
Mm.
in a rich household, and so
Mm.
I really wanted to ensure that I would have financial security. So that was important to me.
Mhm.
Number two was, if I'm being very honest, I wanted external validation that I was smart, and that, I
Mm.
was capable of doing difficult things because I
Mm.
questioned that. Even after coming out of Penn, I questioned it because I got into UBS. I wasn't in the department I wanted to be in. And then after the financial crisis hit, I felt stuck. And
Mm.
no matter what I tried, I couldn't really get out of that department. So I started to question, am I able to do that level of work?
Mm.
Uh, and so that was kind of part of it, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, but then, as I say, I had spent time in a law office many, many years prior. So this was, 2005 or so. So I had some familiarity with the practice of law, and the profession more generally. So it wasn't just completely out of nowhere.
Mm.
There was some thinking about behind it, and then the work I was doing was in conflicts of interest, and kind of anti-money laundering and compliance, and so that's kind of law related or law adjacent. So that was another reason why.
I see. And how long have you been practicing law so far?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think now, I guess over a decade.
Over a decade.
Yeah.
And this is the fun part of the interview, I guess. What are there some misconceptions that you thought you had that you've had before joining law school, and then after graduating, or like after going to school and practicing law, then you're like, oh no, that's not how any of this goes, kind of thing. This is not how I thought it would be.
That's a good question. Um, the many things. I'm just trying to think of which is the right or the best one to talk about. There are many misconceptions, or at least
Mm,
maybe not misconceptions, but
mhm,
surprises
mm,
when I actually first I got into law school and then started practicing. I mean, the one that comes immediately to mind, it's probably not the nicest one, but I
mm,
had no idea how unhappy many lawyers are. Yeah, it was surprising to me. And there's my kind of anecdotal experience just
mm,
working around a bunch of lawyers, but also just statistically, there have been a number of studies done by various organizations, including the American Bar Association. Um, and they found consistently that there are many lawyers who have substance abuse problems, that are highly stressed, depressed, and this is even when it's compared to other professions like medicine.
mm.
Lawyers in particular are highly stressed and are kind of you know
More than doctors?
yeah.
I mean, both 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 jobs deal with people's lives, I guess. So maybe which types of lawyers do you mean, like, or like, lawyers just in general?
Yeah, I don't know that the data is broken down into enough specificity to see by practice area which
Mm,
lawyers are kind of dealing with these issues
mm,
the most. I would imagine that probably lawyers who are dealing with things like death row cases and that kind of thing would be facing a lot of stress.
mm,
But just from my anecdotal kind of experience and what I've seen,
mm.
even lawyers that are not ever dealing with issues like that. So people who are kind of pushing around paper all day are also facing very high levels of stress.
I think pushing paper every day also kind of stresses you out, doesn't it? I don't know if you do that a lot. Like, okay, I didn't ask you. Sorry, I kept jumping. I didn't ask you about like what is it that you do? Because we were talking in the beginning that you do some coaching, a corporate coaching, and you're obviously you graduated from law school. You're a lawyer. What is your day to day job like? How does it look like? Like, what? Take us through it.
Yeah, my day to day now is quite dynamic. So I think if you ask any lawyer this question, they will always say no 2 days are the same. And so
Mm,
uh, that's certainly true for me now.
mm,
But even more so because I do multiple things. So
mm.
maybe I'll take you through, what yesterday was like.
Yeah.
So, yesterday I got up in the morning and had call with a client. So after that call, there was some work I needed to do. And then after that, I needed to put together invoices for my coaching business. And after that, I went and taught a class, so taught a bunch of undergraduate students well, the class is about international business law, but we talked about world order in the class,
Mm,
and how, shifts in world order might change the international laws that underpin business transactions, and so what effect that might have on lawyers in the future.
mm,
And then after that, I went to a networking meeting. And after the networking meeting, I went back and did some more work on the legal side. And so,
mm.
that is, I'd say, a pretty typical day for me in terms of kind of bouncing from one thing to the other.
I see. You said you taught undergrad students. Is that in Temple? Because I saw from your LinkedIn you're also teaching at Temple.
So I was at Rikyo at the time.
Oh, Rico.
Um, so
Mm,
yeah, so I teach at different universities in Japan, not all
mm,
at the same time,
yeah.
thankfully. So that keeps it kind of manageable. But yeah,
Mm,
different students at different levels. So
mm,
Rikyo is undergraduate students mostly.
mm-hmm.
Then I teach at Keio as well, and that is in their graduate program.
I see.
Uh, and then at Temple, that is also at the graduate level, but it is an accredited university in the United States. So you can, if you get a degree from Temple Law, obviously you can go and sit a bar exam. So there, for each of those different universities, what I teach, how I teach, and the students that I teach varies. So it's even though I'm teaching law in all those places, how I teach it varies quite a lot.
Can you explain that a little bit? If it's okay, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course, of course.
yeah.
So at Rikyo, it's an undergraduate program,
Mm,
and it is in their Faculty of Law and Politics.
mm,
But even within that, they have a global program. And so that program is meant to help students to understand how the law can be used
mm,
by practitioners, so not necessarily lawyers, but practitioners working in international organizations mostly. And
mhm,
the program is taught completely in English. Also, the program brings together students who've lived their whole lives in Japan, students who may be ethnically Japanese but have spent most of their lives abroad, and then also students who are not Japanese at all. And so that creates an interesting mix where the students come to the program with a different base of what they've
mhm,
learned in high school, and then also varying levels of English ability.
mm,
So what I have to teach then is, um, a program that can be understood by all of those students, but also be challenging enough for all of those students without overwhelming them. So that is quite challenging. And then I have study abroad students as well who come. And so obviously a lot of them speak English either fluently or natively, and they're coming from a different kind of academic system. And so
mm.
being able to incorporate them as well. So that all has to go into the course design. So that's
So,
Rikyo. And so all of them are different, but that's one example.
yeah. Wow. That's. Uh, did you ever thought that you'd be teaching? When you started your law journey, were you into teaching?
So I never thought that I was going to be teaching at any point. I'd say before I started teaching.
Okay.
Uh, Especially not at the university level. So I did a little bit of teaching when I was
Mm,
much younger. I went to a Montessori school when I
mhm,
was coming up, and so um, during college, sometimes in the summers, I would go back there and I do some teaching
mhm,
there. So at that level, I had done some teaching. That's really elementary school, but I'd never dreamed that I would be teaching undergraduates or graduates, or for that matter, teaching at an accredited law school.
mm.
So no, not at all. I wouldn't say it was even an aspiration of mine, but maybe partially because I didn't really see myself as someone who would be in a position to teach people at that level.
And I don't know if this is a weird question, but how is teaching and coaching different?
Good question. There can be similarities,
Mm.
but there are a lot of differences. And so, firstly, we'd have to get into what does it even mean to coach someone?
Exactly.
Because
Yes, please.
so firstly, there are many definitions of coaching, and most people don't define it the same way. Coaching, unlike the medical profession or the legal profession, is not regulated by a governmental entity. And so as a result, people just call it whatever they want to call it and do within it whatever they want to do. But under the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, and that's where I kind of have my training and my certification. Coaching is a partnership with the client you're working with, and really the coach is there to create an environment that allows the person that you're coaching to look within themselves and find the answers. So I know that sounds a little bit esoteric, but one of the premises of coaching is that people are complete and that people have a great deal of knowledge and capability. And really, what they need is to be given the space and sometimes ask the right questions so that they can tap into that genius that they have. So, yeah,
Mm.
maybe I'll stop there for a minute.
No, no, honestly, it's very interesting. But like, how do you, how like, obviously, I'm not gonna know everything about coaching in one in 5 minutes, but how, everyone is different, right? How do you help people tap into their own potential? Like, how are there certain techniques, or like, do you, are there things that you refer back to kind of find each individual's, potential?
Yeah, it's this is I think one of the funnest parts of coaching and one of the most difficult parts, exactly because everyone's different. And this is why I think that coaching is such a great modality, because if you come to a coaching session and say to a client, you should do this or you should do that, that's coming from somewhere. And probably, in my case, that would be coming from me, from my experience, from what I'm perceiving. But
Hmm.
coaching likes to, instead of focusing on the coach, looking at the client, or the coachee is often what we refer to the client as. Um, Turning around and asking questions of the coachee to get clear about what their values are, to get clear about what's going on for them, to get clear about what their worldview is. And then once all of that is clear, then working with the coachee to kind of come up with, what is the way forward. And so as far as techniques are concerned, in coaching, you often hear people talk about powerful questions. So asking your clients things that will make them stop and pause and think deeply about things. And I remember when I was doing coach training, me and most of the other people I was in training with were always trying to find those powerful questions and at the beginning almost like collect them.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things you discover fairly early on is the question is not powerful because of the question itself. The question is powerful because you ask the right question to the right person at the right time.
Can you share an example, for example? Like, I don't know, something at the top of your head.
Um, yeah, I mean, there can be very basic questions. So, for example, if someone says, um, maybe an example I had recently was someone was saying they want to help their child to find a job.
Hmm.
And then there was a lot of conversation about, what they had done to help their child find a job and difficulties that were going on. And then, I just asked them, what is it that you are hoping to gain from helping your child to find a job? And that question can sound very basic and maybe obvious of like, of course, I want my child to find a job because I love them and I want them to be successful. But what was underneath that was actually, oh, you know what? I don't feel like I've been a good parent to my child. And by helping them to find a job, that's a way for me to kind of redeem myself and make up for what I didn't do when they were coming up. So what we discovered was actually it wasn't helping them to find a job so that they could be financially independent. It was helping them to find a job so that the client could feel okay about how they were as a parent, which is a much deeper issue, actually. So that is an example of a powerful question, not the question itself, but what that question unearths.
And this is why, like you mentioned, like questions probably change depending on the coachee, him or herself, right?
Yes, that's right.
Something that is a strong question for someone might not be as strong for someone else, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that we talk about in coaching as well is kind of dancing with your client. And the idea is that the coach doesn't know where the conversation is going. The coach doesn't know what needs to be focused on when you come to the conversation. The coach is there to figure that out along with the coachee. So You ask a question, you see it's not landing. You try one kind of technique, you see that it's not going anywhere. And so you have a kind of toolkit and
Mhm.
you keep pulling things out of the bag until you find the thing that works. And
Mhm.
so that's part of the process, really. And not getting flustered with that. And as a coach, not coming to the conversation feeling like you should know anything, not feeling like you have something to prove to the coachee. And that can be very difficult, right? Because on the one hand, the coachee is coming to you because they want results, right? And so as the coach, in a way, you can feel like you need to deliver the results. But one of the things that I always try to do is go back to what am I here for? And what I'm there with the coachee to do is to provide a space for them to be able to reflect. And as long as I've done that, I feel like I've done my job. And when I start getting into the mode of I need to prove, that's when I start to try to think I need to do something. And that I have found whenever I've done that, the session does not go as well as it could go. That's not what it's about. And it's okay if the coachee gets angry or frustrated. Those are all emotions that come up. Or it's okay for the coachee to say, no, that's not the direction I want to go in. The beauty of those kinds of emotion coming up is that when you get a no, then you know that's not the right path to go down. You go down another path. If you get a strong emotional reaction, maybe that's something to even get into. Oh, that's interesting that this is bringing up this kind of emotion for you. Where is that coming from? So as long as I can stay calm and not let what the coach is saying to me mean anything about me, then I can help them to work on them. So, sorry, again, it can sound kind of esoteric, but that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting career to actually be in. Obviously, so I think I'm the kind of person that needs. I like freedom, but I need a little bit of predictability
Mhm.
in in whatever I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
But for this kind of career or this kind of um, career path, you have to be quite flexible with your expectations from the client or the coaches also, because yeah, literally every day is different. Now I understand when you said like every day is different for you, like it literally is kind of.
Yeah, yeah, you never know what someone's going to bring. And as I say, they might come with something, but then you discover that's not actually what the issue is at all.
Mm.
And so then you need to address something else. Or there is an issue, but there's a blockage that needs to be clear before we can even get to, the
Hmm.
main goal.
I can't help but to think, how is coaching different from psychology?
Mhm.
Like what's the difference?
So there are probably a few different modalities to explain. So there's coaching, there's teaching, which you mentioned before, there's mentoring, and then there's therapy.
Mhm.
And so we've talked a little bit about what coaching is. Then there's teaching, which is a little bit of a different approach. So teaching usually is where someone who has more knowledge and or experience will tell someone else how things are. Here are the facts, and you should listen to me because I am the expert on this topic, or I have the lived experience on this topic. Right.
Yeah.
Usually someone older, usually someone in authority. And so, uh, therefore, as I kind of mentioned, coaching is a partnership. And so we are equals. We're speaking like this. I don't know more than you. You don't know more than I do, except you do know more about your situation than I do and your feelings and emotions than I do. In that sense, you are really the expert. And I have to humble myself and say, I don't know anything, right? At
Hmm.
all. That's not what this is about, right? So it's slightly different than teaching. Then
Hmm.
mentorship is a little bit closer to teaching. Mentorship comes from a place, again, of someone who has gone where you want to go and can kind of guide you based upon what they have experienced, what they've seen in other people. So maybe not necessarily their own path, but based upon some experience of what they've seen out in the world. and they say you should do this, basically.
Hmm.
Um, so again, that's slightly different. You've got a difference in the power dynamic there.
Yeah.
And therapy is an interesting one. And I would say there definitely is some overlap, but the easiest way to differentiate the two is in the case of therapy, working with someone to kind of reconcile things in the past so that they can function in the present.
Hmm.
So something has gone wrong at some point, and now there's a part of your life where you feel like you are having problems functioning and getting to the place where you have that under control. And so while it still may be an issue, you can make it through your life and it doesn't become a huge stumbling block for you.
I see. Well, I coaching also for, if I corporate coaching that you met you I think it shows in your LinkedIn. Does that mean a different kind of coaching too? That is s- s- specially directed toward companies to kind of improve their work culture or something like that, or is that a little bit? Am I losing the meaning a little bit?
No, no, you're not losing the meaning at all. So to me, all coaching is the same.
Mm,
Uh, I don't market myself that way because that's not the most attractive way of marketing, but just being very honest. To me, the core of
mm,
coaching is the same regardless. And if you're a good coach, you can coach anyone.
mm,
However, the corporate world is its own beast, and
mm,
particularly for organizations that are profit focused, that kind of idea of what I was talking about before of this dancing with your client and exploration and what's going on for you today or
mm,
what's standing in the way of you and your happiness that those that line of questioning is not a line of questioning that most professionals are used to kind of engaging with, firstly.
mhm, mhm.
Secondly, most people, when they are in work mode, have their corporate armor on.
Yeah.
So they're not there saying, well, let me just, unearth all of my deepest held emotions and share
Yeah.
that openly
Yeah.
with you, right? That's not how most corporate engagements go. A lot of times when coaches are brought in and the company is in charge of kind of that intervention, people immediately are thinking, how is this going to be used against me?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So that's where it starts, oftentimes. So this again gets back to what I was talking about before. As a coach, then your line of questioning needs to be very different in a corporate context. And so I market myself as an executive coach, and I focus on individuals and corporate performance. So how can we take you from where you are to a higher level. So maybe you're an individual contributor and you want to become a manager, or you now are a manager and you're dealing with how do I manage these people and processes, and I have to deal with cash flow and all these issues. So that becomes the hook or the anchor for the coaching.
Mhm.
And start there. And those are issues that people are generally more willing to talk about. Um,
I
and then you
see.
discover, though, ultimately, maybe the
Mm,
reason why, you're not delegating work is because you don't trust. And the trust is, or the lack of trust is because you have a fear of
mm,
something.
mhm.
And so it always gets back to emotions. It always does, right?
I see.
So you end up dealing with those things, but you often need to establish the rapport with someone to go there. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is in a corporate environment, especially in areas like law, the people you're working with are very smart people, very accomplished people, and they often may be thinking, how is this person going to do anything for me? What do
Mhm.
they know? What
Yeah.
experience do they have to
Yeah.
even come to me with anything?
Yeah.
So that's another kind of barrier that you need to break down of getting to a place where they will at least think maybe this person has something they can offer. So
I
maybe
see.
I should be engaged in this process.
See. Do coaching and being a lawyer have things in common? Like, do the which one did you become first, a coach or like a lawyer?
So that's a good question. I think that there can be things in common, and I think
Mhm,
in some ways the best lawyers will adopt a lot of the coaching best practices. So I
mhm,
became a coach before, or sorry, I became a lawyer before I became a coach.
mhm,
Uh, but I think a lot of the things that drew me to coaching are inherent to who I am. And so, while I didn't have the structure uh, behind me before that, I think a lot of the things that drew me to coaching those are things that I kind of had already been doing in my life before that time.
I see.
Yeah. So
The-
the parallel, sorry to just
mm,
answer your question on that.
mm,
Um, as I kind of mentioned before, coaching is about um, being in partnership with the coachee
mm,
and dancing with the coachee. And so, as a lawyer too, I think the best lawyers are going to listen to what their client wants to get done. And listening isn't just the words that they say, but the things they don't say, the inflection in their voice, uh,
mm,
you know, understanding, all the nuance and asking the right questions so that your client will give you and themselves as well all of the right context so that the issue they're facing can be addressed properly. And issues that maybe at first they didn't even know were there, they start to be unearthed. So, as a lawyer, you need to be very good at questioning your client. And then clearly, developing a strong rapport with them so that they feel open enough to tell you what they need to tell you, even if it's embarrassing, even if it's something that's illegal, right? As their lawyer, you need to know what is so that you can go from there. And so, in that way, I think coaching and the practice of law do overlap, actually.
uh, how is the actual practice of law different from something that we see on TV, something like Better Call Saul? No, how how different is it from what we saw there, from what we see there?
Well, so first, I would say,
Hopefully, quite different. 'Cause, you know?
well, yeah. Well, firstly, I'll say I'm a corporate lawyer, so it's
Mm.
not often that people are calling me in those types of situations.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say most of the time, law, in the best way, is a boring profession, and there's not all of that drama. So, what you find yourself doing a lot as a lawyer is analyzing difficult questions. So your client will present you with, some objective. They want to do something. And usually, if you're practicing at the top of the market, they've come to you because it's not straightforward. If it were
Mm,
straightforward, they'd go to someone that's cheaper to do it. But they've come to you. And the firms that are at kind of the top now are charging, I'd say at a minimum, $1,000 an hour for someone fairly senior, and sometimes charging over $3,000 an hour
mhm.
for advice. So that's just to give you a sense of what we're talking about. And usually it's not just one lawyer, right? It's usually a team
A team of
uh,
lawyers,
of
yes.
lawyers, right? So that is the kind of price point we're talking about. So this is really when clients are kind of stuck and saying, I need the best advice. And so, yeah, lawyers will then evaluate this. So the first step will be spotting all the issues. What could go wrong here? Have we looked at all the potential legal and regulatory frameworks? If it's a cross-border transaction, are all of the right professionals and lawyers from all of the relevant jurisdictions involved? So you look at all the issues there. And then you start thinking about what are ways to resolve those issues. And you think about that through the prism of what your client is trying to do. So that there may be a whole universe of what you could do, but then the client doesn't want to do certain things. And so, how to get the client what they want and do it legally at the same time and do it on budget is also important. And then lawyers are often brought in as well to be project managers. And so that's a skill set I think that a lot of people aren't aware of when they're studying to become a lawyer. But oftentimes the lawyers have to kind of move the process forward. So that's both on the litigation side and the corporate side. Who are all the parties who are involved? What step has to happen when in this process? How do we ensure that if something is late, we still have enough time to get things done on time? If people make mistakes, how do we try to stop the mistakes from happening? So you really have to map up the whole process from beginning to end, all the things that could go wrong, and then plan around them. So that is a big part of the practice of law, to choreographing things.
I see. Uh, from what I hear, I think you enjoy this career path that you're having, both as a lawyer, project management, and making sure that everything goes according to plan, and also coaching. Did did how can I say it? When you were in your career before joining law school,
Mhm.
looking back at it right now, do you think like you did the right decision by going into law school and partaking in this career path that you're in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be lying if I said every moment of it has been pure ecstasy.
that's
It's
that's rarely the case, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Law is a very difficult profession, and it will push you and challenge you in basically every way. And so there was a lot that I had to learn in the early days. There's still a lot of I have to learn every day. I think as the more you practice, the more you know. There's so much out there, right? And so it's a very
Mm.
humbling profession in that way. Um, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do it and to do it at really the highest levels, and work with some really phenomenal people along the way. Um, Becoming a lawyer and practicing both in New York and in Tokyo has opened up a lot of doors to me. So one of them that I mentioned before was working with lawyers as a coach, right?
Mhm.
Lawyers are hard to convince, but they're a little easier to convince if you're someone who can say, "Yeah, I've sat where you've sat. I know what kind of problems you're dealing with. I think I'm someone who can actually help you." And so I think my experiences to date have allowed me to access a group of people who may otherwise not have been open to things like coaching.
I see. You mentioned you practice in New York and now in Tokyo, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, it is practicing the law. So if there's a lawyer practicing in New York, can they just come to Japan and practice in Tokyo also, or is there recent? It, what I'm saying is like isn't law and legislations different from different for different countries or not? And how do you manage to work in completely different countries and still be able to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It can get quite technical, but in the I guess the simplest terms, yes, you absolutely do need to be licensed to practice in the jurisdiction. Um, and so I'm a New York qualified attorney, and so I am licensed to practice New York law. I am not licensed to practice Japanese law, nor do I want to practice Japanese law.
Yeah,
Um, and so then the question might be, well, what are you doing in Japan? And the answer is that I work with Japanese clients who want to invest in the United States or acquire assets in the United States.
I see. So the content of your job is basically still the States. You're just practicing it in Japan.
Yes, so usually there's some kind of U.S. nexus. It could also be the other way around, U.S. investor that wants
Mm,
to, buy some asset in Japan.
mm,
Um, Again, without getting too technical, you can also decide the jurisdiction of the contract that you've written. So you could have a party in Singapore and a party in Nova Scotia, and they can decide that they want New York law to govern their contract. And so
Mm,
that's another area where someone like me could be brought in. And then maybe just one final one because I could go on and on. But a kind of unique role that lawyers like me often play is maybe it's a Japanese governed contract with Japanese counterparties. Everyone is Japanese. Maybe you have a few foreign entities involved somewhere, on the periphery.
mm,
Uh, but one or more of the parties to the transaction will say, we want to bring the kind of best in class thinking to these legal issues we have. So, can you, kind of international counsel work with local counsel, the Japanese counsel, and push assumptions, figure out, ways to get this done based upon your experience? So, won't be practicing law per se, but it's almost like a consulting role of kind of stress testing, kind of what we're hearing in the domestic market and saying, oh, we've done deals where this kind of structure has been done. Is that possible to do in this case? No, it's not. Why not? Well, can we try it like this? Oh, no one's never done it before. Well, what happens if we try it? So
I
pushing in
see.
that kind of way, sometimes we're brought in to do that kind of work.
I see. That's that's actually very interesting. It, so I'm interviewing many people from different kind of careers, and everyone is completely different. Like this is the first time I hear about this kind of consultancy kind of career. Definitely very interesting. Uh, was there like a reason you decided to move to Japan? When, like you said, like you're New York licensed lawyer, right?
Mhm.
Why did you decide to move countries?
That is a good question. Um, so
Yeah.
I was, born and raised in the United States, and I was there until I was 17. And then I got the first experience of living abroad when I moved to Singapore. And also, when I was in Singapore, I had to take another language. And it was an international school, so they didn't offer a lot of languages at the beginning level. Most were already taught at kind of the native level or almost native level.
Mm,
And so there weren't a lot of choices. For me, the two viable choices were Malay and Japanese. And so I thought Japanese for me might be a little bit more useful in the future, and I started taking it. I had no interest in anything about Japan or anime, manga, no interest at all. And just started taking Japanese, and it kind of grew from there, really. That's the start of it.
I see. Uh, so now you've been in Japan for a long time. Uh, how does knowing the language, and I from from my understanding, you have very strong command on the language, uh, change the experiences of expats in Japan?
That's such a big question. I think it's one of the questions actually in Japan. So for me, speaking Japanese and having a decent command of the language kind of takes you from seeing Japan in black and white to seeing it in 3D and in color.
Mm,
Um, because it, unlike maybe an American learning how to speak French or Italian, um, in order for someone who is not kind of initiated in the way that things work in Japan, in order to learn the language well, you need to understand the culture. You need to understand parts of history. You need to understand etiquette. And so when you start to learn those things, the way that you experience Japan is completely different. You also have to get a lot more sensitive to what's going on around you, both in terms of space and how what people might be expecting. of you, whether they say it or not, or, they might say something and it means exactly the opposite. And so, you just have a lot more antennas you have to have out there. And so by virtue of that, you just start seeing the place completely different. So I think for anyone who really wants to live and work here and get the, kind of get the fullness and richness of being in Japan, language is just central to that.
And how does knowing Japanese affected your career as a lawyer, for example, as someone who, I mean, if you want to work in Japan, it might be a good idea to know the language. I mean, to let's begin there. I remember I met a guy probably during my first year in Japan. Yeah, he was American. He is American, I guess. He's still American. And I was on at your first year in Japan, and I came here like basically with almost zero knowledge of Japanese. All I knew is hiragana and katakana, and I wanted to learn the language. I've been asking everyone like, how did you learn it? How well do you speak it? And he said like, I don't speak Japanese. I'm like, how long have you been here? It's like 3 years. You don't really need Japanese to work here. That's what he told me, and since then, like, I don't know. My personal experience tells me that that's not the case, but it depends on the kinds of work that you're doing too. Since if your work really doesn't involve, dealing with Japan and anything, basically, or with Japanese people, then that might be the case. But for me and for many people around me, we have to deal with, we're living in Japan. You're gonna have to, speak Japanese or deal with Japanese people. So, in your case, being a lawyer, how did knowing the language affect, your career?
Massively, in a word.
Mhm.
It's possible to practice law in Japan as a foreign qualified attorney and not speak Japanese. And I know quite a number of people who are in that boat or people who speak limited Japanese. And one of the reasons why that's possible is because there is demand for certain expertise and it's not always easily addressed in the market. It's true in other professions as well. Maybe you are an excellent stock trader, and you as long as you have all of the statistics and you have all the news in English, you can trade Japanese equities just like you could trade US equities. So there are definitely niches where you can operate in Japan and do very, very well for yourself and not speak any Japanese whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, if you're in those roles, you can have people kind of deal with all the Japanese things so that you don't even see those things actually. And there are many, many people like that. I mean, even in my case, when I first came to Japan, I remember that the bank dealt with all my immigration matters. So I never went to the immigration office before. And then many, many years later, I had to go for something. This is when I was a student and I needed to get an amendment to some of my permissions. And I went there and saw what that experience was like. And it was an experience
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to go there.
Yeah. Mm.
But there are many, many people who have never gone because, there's someone to do all of that work for them, to pay their utility bills for them, to deal with all of the admin for them. And so they don't see that side of Japan. But for me, in the work I do and the types of clients I usually work with, and the reason why they come and want to do some work with me is because um, they're trying to do something that is global in scope, but they need to do that through an entity which is at its core Japanese and how it operates, how it makes decisions, risk tolerance, speed, everything. And while they could go with someone potentially who doesn't speak Japanese, because there's usually at least a few people in the organization who can speak English, um, someone who just kind of gets it
Mm.
um, is a point that's really important for the clients. They don't have to explain over and over. Maybe they're trying to do something that seems, illogical, or maybe even harmful to, where they want to end up ultimately. And that can be a source of great friction. And so having someone who, understands the culture and the way that Japanese organizations work and what they care about and what they don't care about,
Mhm.
can help things out a lot. And part of the role um, that a lot of lawyers like me play is dealing with the other counterparty. So maybe it's someone in the States or someone in Europe and running that interference for the client. So the client doesn't have to deal with that, right? The client can just say, this is what I want to do. We get it completely. And then we can do that for them. So
Mhm.
that's not something you can do if you don't speak the language because you just it's almost impossible to get to understand Japan at that very, very intimate level without speaking the language.
Right. And talking about difficult things, I guess we've been mentioning, the merits and the good part of being, you know, in your position and working as a coach and as a lawyer. What's the difficult part? What's the thing that is the not so? I mean, working on invoicing is also like I don't think that's a it's a lot of fun. But other than that, is there anything that you could think of that doesn't that isn't particularly fun to do, or is actually difficult? Something that
Mhm.
you just don't enjoy as much.
Mhm. So that's interesting because I would probably bifurcate the two things, difficult things and things I don't enjoy so much. Because one of the most difficult things about what I'm doing is the fact that I'm doing all these things. Uh,
Mhm.
it is incredibly difficult um, to practice law and not let any balls drop there. Be there for your client, give them, the very best advice, uh, even if you're doing that by itself.
True.
But making sure that that is done to the same standard that they would expect if I were there 24/7 is very important to me. And so that I'd say is probably the paramount thing. Then teaching, it requires a different mindset completely. And so getting into that mindset and preparing lesson plans and also you teach, but you also need to inspire, right, as well. And so thinking about how to do that, like I have students often, they'll come to my first lecture of the semester and say, I kind of signed up for this class, but I'm not really sure if it's for me. I'm going to test it out and to inspire them where they're like, wow, you know what? This is so interesting. I want to spend a semester here. So that there's a, kind of dual role, maybe more than two roles you play as a professor. And so thinking about how to do that. And then on the coaching side, at least in my case, it's not just going out for coffee and speaking to someone or speaking over Zoom. It is, I have to be an entrepreneur there. So I have to think about sales, marketing. I have to think about funnels and channels. I have to think about how do you overcome objections, make all kinds of materials, do pitches, and get told no a bunch of times. And so that requires both having the mindset of someone who can be an architect and plan out the process. It also requires having the mind of a salesperson and someone who doesn't crumble when they get rejected over and over. As a lawyer, getting rejected or failing is very painful, and sometimes it can, be catastrophic. So you have to bring kind of different mindsets. Also, risk, a different risk tolerance. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to think about risk very different than if you're a lawyer. Um, so maybe this is a different point, but kind of putting on the right cap at the right time and taking it off
Mhm.
is another thing I have to do many, many times every day. So it's challenging, but I would say all of those are the fun and good challenges actually. So maybe that's only part of the answer to your question, but maybe I'll stop there for a minute.
No, it's very interesting, but something that I like hearing you answer the question, like I immediately thought, like, why do you do all of these at the same time? If it's obviously not easy to do. So why do you put yourself? And obviously, if these are some things that you enjoy, like probably if you don't enjoy doing them, you wouldn't be doing that, right? But as from what you're saying, like it requires a lot of energy to be able to do everything together. So what keeps you going in all of these directions at the same time?
I think that for me, they all kind of satisfy different things that I'm interested in. And um, so that is what kind of keeps it fun and challenging and exciting. I kind of gave you a snippet of how have spent my Wednesday, but almost every day is like that, right? Where, you get to advise a client on a multi-billion-dollar transaction, and then you're working with students and having students say to you, you have really made the difference in my academic career. I'm pursuing a completely different path than I would have if I had never met you. And then, yeah, working with people on all their job and performance stuff, and there too, really trying to make a difference there. It's very meaningful, and rewarding. And the practice of law can be rewarding for sure. So don't get me wrong, but I think in that kind of personal way, especially the kind of law I practice, it's almost always very large organizations that you're working for at the end of the day. And, the news will make the newspaper, and that's all great. But I really do like that kind of individual person to person kind of interaction, and being able to make a difference there. And then also the other thing that I really enjoy is creativity, being able to create things, being in environments that are different than what I do. So I really love art and culture and design, and that's not part of my daily work as a lawyer for sure. But as a coach in particular. And because I'm, kind of an entrepreneur, I wouldn't say I'm like a tech founder or anything like that, but as an entrepreneur, then sometimes I go out and hang out with entrepreneurs
Mm.
and get to see the stuff they're building and creating. And that is just a completely different side of my brain that I really enjoy kind of focusing on. And so, yeah, I think it's partially I just like all these things, have all these different interests, and have the ability to do it. And just because it's, hard, I don't think that's a reason to shy away from it. Not trying to be pompous or anything, but I think every step in my life, really, there have been hard things I've had to do. Um,
Mhm.
and that's just part of my way of operating. So I think in that sense, it doesn't seem strange to me at all. It's just like normal.
I was about to ask you actually, like, were there things you were uncomfortable with, during, are there things that you're uncomfortable with, which during, wearing these many hats? I mean, wearing these many hats could be uncomfortable in itself, I guess. But do still things kind of, were there things ever making you uncomfortable when you were doing all these things together? Or it's just something that you just kind of, you, how can I say? Like you said, every day is different, and you're just comfortable with the ideas that there are going to be different challenges every day.
Mhm. It's an interesting question. Yeah, sure. I have all kinds of things that cause discomfort to come up.
Mm.
Uh, the easiest one that comes immediately to mind is I hate going to networking events. Um,
Really?
I'm I am extremely introverted,
Mm.
and going to events like that suck up a lot of my energy. And so I kind of have to prepare to go to them. I have to kind of detox after I've left them as well. And it
Mm.
usually, takes the evening, like until the next morning. I'm usually exhausted from going to them. So these days, I try not to schedule that many of them, and I try not to schedule them when I have to do something really big the next day. Because, if I've got a big thing on the law side the next morning, or I need to have a coaching session the next morning where I need to come with a lot of energy and a lot of space for my client, then that becomes difficult for me to do. So, I talked about the flipping of the hats earlier, and I think always being mindful of like what is required of me mentally, physically, emotionally, in the process that I'm doing, so that I can bring my best to that. So that is a challenge to do that. But going to networking meetings, that's part of business development, and so that's something I have to do. I'd say the other thing, which this is maybe a technical lawyer's thing, but conflicts of interest.
Mm.
Um, I have to manage conflicts of interest in each of the silos. So as a professor, sometimes, students tell me certain things in confidence, or there's certain ways that the organization needs to operate or wants to operate, which may not always be in line with what students want. And so I have to be careful there. On the coaching side, I have to think about the coachee, so the person I'm actually working with directly, what is it they're trying to do? But sometimes that's not always perfectly in line with the organization they're working at, right? So dealing with that and what I'm going to tell to whom and what I won't tell is important. And obviously, thinking about who I'm getting paid from as well. So that is important. And then on the legal side, obviously confidentiality is important, and representing, you can't represent two sides of the same transaction, on and on. And then there's the conflicts between them, right, as well. So I have to manage conflicts all day, every day. And that can be quite difficult. But I think that that's, just part of the cost of doing business the way I've chosen to do it.
How do you mentioned you detox after networking events? How do you detox from all this things that are happening at at the same time? Do you take some time off like regularly, or like how do you how can I say, how do you make sure that you're in the best shape possible, not just physically but mentally, in order to be able to handle all these tasks?
Yeah, for me, I need some time alone to just sit with my thoughts and just get clear. So kind of to translate all of the physical and mental sensations into logic.
Mhm.
So that for me really helps of like, oh, I might have this feeling in my chest or in my stomach or whatever, or I might be, kind of mentally feeling down or, whatever it is, or frustrated. And so going from that to what has caused that? What have I thought to cause that? And just kind of getting to the root cause of it. That's something that for me is very helpful in the first instance. And then just kind of thinking through, what am I making whatever happened kind of mean about me? And getting clear about that too. And so sometimes it means, there's a lesson that I take away for the next interaction. Sometimes it means, you know what? No, there's nothing I would have done any differently than what I did this time. And I'm happy I did what I did. So that for me at a base level is something I like to do. And then something kinetic, I think, is always important for me. So, if I'm at home, I've got a gym in the house. So, whether that's like lifting weights or doing some cardio. But if I'm out in Tokyo, like for example, I recently went to, a networking event and I walked back, from there to where I was staying, because I find that that helps. Also, I grew up singing a lot, so
Mhm.
sometimes I sing
Mhm.
as well, and that's very helpful for me. And then in more recent times, things like breath work, I found to be really helpful.
Mhm.
And then also meditation and prayer actually, I'd say would round out the things. So
Mhm.
um, I pull from the toolkit. Sometimes certain things work better than others. Sometimes I don't have time for certain things.
Mhm.
So yeah, it kind of depends on the day and the situation, but that's kind of some of the things I try to do.
I see. Well, I'm taking a long time from your schedule today, I guess. This took a little bit longer, but I will have two more questions to close this interview with. First, do you think that you could have uh, made some decisions earlier in your career that would have taken you to this step that you're in faster? Or do you think that this is just I'm here because of the decisions that I've made, and that's how it should have been.
Hmm.
Which view do you have on this matter?
For me, definitely the latter for sure. I think I could have planned my career very differently, such that I ended up in equity sales and trading at UBS, and I became managing director there by, kind of early to mid 30s and made millions of dollars working in finance and then been off to something else. And that would have been quite an okay life to have, for sure. Um, but I think I've just had such a richness that's been added to my life because of all of the things that have happened. And uh, from as I say, like my career didn't go how I wanted to go, and that was disappointing. And then having to kind of bounce back from that and go on to the next thing and try a different, career out, and then being asked to teach, and then, trying to do coaching and realizing, oh, you can't just sit back and clients will just come to you. You actually have to go out and and find a way to get them.
Mm,
Um, so for me, it's just been such a rich experience. It also allows me to share those experiences with other people, and to reach people I otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. The one thing I would say, though, if I could go back and do it differently, is to be able to tell myself to chill out and enjoy every stage of where my career will go. Because I spent a lot of time, especially early in my career, wanting to get there faster. Um,
mm,
wanting to get out of the role I was in into a different role, regretting that I didn't, get into the big job earlier, making it mean all kinds of things about me and my ability and everything else. Instead of sitting back and saying, wow, I'm in one of the great, kind of capitals in the world. I've got a good job. I've got a lot of friends around. There's always something exciting happening. Let's see what else is waiting around the corner.
mm.
So I think I spent too much time worrying about stuff that just didn't matter when I could have just been soaking in more of the excitement and the greatness that was around me.
See, great answer. I actually like. Have you seen The Office? Yeah, there is a quote that I forgot his name, but he said like it's. I wish that we could know that these are the good old days before they become the good old days.
Uh,
And I remember I saw that once and I was like, yeah, like you never really appreciate the time and the experiences that you're going through until you've moved past that and then you look back at it and you reminisce basically, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last question. uh, in this career, no one tells you that. Can you finish the sentence?
It's even possible.
No one tells you that it's even possible?
Yeah.
Mm,
So for me, I'm a lawyer, I'm a coach, and I teach. And I don't think I know of anyone who has the same constellation of things they're doing as me right now.
mm,
And so, yeah, I think, oftentimes we kind of think about what's possible based upon what we see other people doing, and then that's how we model our lives. And I think it's one of the great things about what's happened to me. Like I just kind of fell into doing all these things. I never sat down and said, okay, how can I maintain, a legal practice and also become a coach and also, teach at university. It just happened. Because if I had tried to do that, like firstly, I would have been, that's ridiculous. I would have just said that's ridiculous. There's no way that I
mm,
could do that.
mm,
And so that's one of the things I try to challenge myself on even now is just, what more can I do? And I don't mean necessarily taking on more rules. I don't mean in that way.
mm,
But where am I kind of putting up these barriers or these obstacles for myself where they don't need to be there? Why am I, artificially restricting what I'm able to do? So I'd say that's the big thing. Often for many people, whatever their career is, they feel like, oh, this is all I can do, or no, they'd never allow me to do that. Working part-time in a law firm is not a common thing to do. I've come across very, very few people who are doing that at the level that I'm practicing. Um, but it can be done because I'm doing it and I'm a normal, human being like everyone else. So I'd say that's probably the big thing. Whatever someone's role is, there's just because someone hasn't done it doesn't mean it can't be done. So, don't put that restriction on yourself.
If I can ask you, like, what is something that you did right, that you think you did right, that is allowing you to live this life that you're living right now, to be able to practice all the things that you feel greatly about?
Something I
If,
did right.
if there is one thing, like, I know, like, it's probably like, it's a very difficult thing to pinpoint unless you already have it. But if you can think of one thing that, yeah, that's probably what helped me do this, for example.
Um, yeah, I mean, there are different angles I could tackle this question with, but I think really for me, I just try to always treat people with a lot of respect and care, and um, try to assume the best in people. And you might be like, why have you gone there with the answer? Um, but for me, in my career, it's all about relationships, interacting with other people. I don't think I've gotten anywhere in my life. Any of the big things that have happened to me, I haven't done them alone. There's always been someone who's believed in me or, taken a risk for me. And I think part of that is because, I've tried, don't always succeed, but I try to be a good person and I try to do right by other people and try to help out people even when there's not anything in it for me. And, I just believe that if you do that, good things will happen. And so, I really couldn't ask for much more in my life where I am right now. And I'd like to believe part of that is because I'm trying to live my life in a way that, that is respectful of other people and trying to elevate other people too.
Well, thank you very much for the great answer. This is such a great answer to close the interview with. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, and hopefully, I don't know. I guess I need to meet you once in person because online we only met this time. So at least let's grab a coffee maybe one time.
Yeah, yeah, would love to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.